Hello and welcome to another week in the 18th century Georgian book club. We're not actually Georgian this week because we're Pope, and I'm bringing one of Pope's poems because that is what Pope is best known for. But before we start, remember there is our shop, which is how you support us. There are books. We have some new books coming out this year that are just so exciting, so keep your eyes peeled for that. We also have writing services, and there is also the Redbubble store, which has loads and loads and loads of pretty designs. There's over 100 of them, and hopefully we'll be adding a few more in the next few weeks. Life has been a bit hectic, so haven't been able to add new designs lately, but we will get there. And if you want to support us but don't want to spend any money, that is absolutely fine. Like, subscribe, leave a comment and share the videos. That is a great way to support us without spending a single cent. So what are we starting with this week? This week we're starting with one of Alexander Pope's probably his most famous poem. I think everybody knows, Alexander Pope, Rape of the Lock. That's what everybody knows Alexander Pope for. So we're having a look at Rape of the Lock. Now, just to start out with, Alexander Pope is using rape, the word rape, in the Latin sense to mean to steal. Now, you find this word used, I don't want to be continually using it if I can avoid it. We find this word being used in relation to the Sabine women, in relation to Helen of Troy, and so it was used a lot for the idea of carrying off. The word changed in English. The word rape changed in English in the Middle Ages, in around the 15th century, in the 1400s, is when it acquired an additional meaning, an additional sexual meaning. And this is something that you need to consider with this poem, because although there is no sexual contact between any of these characters, there is very much a sexual undertone to it, which I think is part of the reason why Alexander Pope has used the word rape rather than theft. Because literally it is just a theft, but there is more going on in the poem than the word theft implies, and thus we get Rape of the Lock. So now that we've got there, what is it? It is a mock heroic. So much like Jonathan Swift's Battle of the Books, last time we did one of our short things, Battle of the Books is a mock heroic. It's a mock battle. It's taking the Iliad. Pope is also taking the Iliad, remembering Pope made a significant translation of the Iliad that provided for him financially for pretty much the rest of his life. So at the same time as he was working on his translation of the Iliad, he wrote Rape of the Lock. And it's mocking it. It's mocking not only the Iliad in a mock heroic, wherein the arming of the warriors becomes the makeup table of Belinda, where where all the warring parties are the Trojans and the Greeks, and the weaponry of war is now translated to men and women in a salon it's in the court, in Hampton Court, is where the great scandal occurs. So it is playing on very much the images that come up in the Iliad. And his writing, remembering when we started Alexander Pope a few months back, Alexander Pope is a satirist who is working within what is understood in his world. And this is a world where classical literature among his peers is very much understood. People read this stuff. Nowadays, these books are not considered books that you have to read. Pretty much the only subset of people outside of people with an academic interest in these books who would even attempt a lot of the ancient Greek or Romans are the dark academia people. So the fact of the war in Troy being so iconic that everyone has an idea of it helps, but you do actually kind of, much like with the Swift, much like with a lot of these things, you do kind of need to have read the poem, the original poem, for this to be funny. And it is funny. So I read this. It takes literally an hour to read, maybe less. I had actually started out listening to it with an audiobook, but I loathed the reader, the stresses that they put on it. They really namby-pambied it. They namby-pambied it. They gave it the stresses that William Wordsworth criticizes Pope for having, which is not Pope's fault. It's the fault of lesser writers. When you read the original, what you find is lightness. I was really shocked at how light the verse is, because it is blank verse, and blank verse can get very, very heavy. You have, for instance, Richard II is entirely in blank verse, and that's a pretty ponderous, dense play when you look at it. Milton's Paradise Lost, which I had started to listen to over the Easter break, because I was curious about it, and then I think I listened to about 2 books, and I went, oh, it's an apology for the Civil War. Oh, okay, I'm good. That one is also in blank verse. Pope is actually more rigorous blank verse than either Shakespeare or Milton use, but it's frothy and light. Whereas Shakespeare and Milton, you get this heavy, dense political play in Richard II. In Milton, you get this puritanical apologia for the English Civil War, and that's why Satan is supposedly so seductive. He's supposed to be a stand-in for Cromwell, but I mean, I hate Cromwell anyway, as does anyone who has any Irish heritage, because he committed genocide in Ireland. So I hate Cromwell. I'm not going to be at all sympathetic to him. Dude, just forget it. So once I worked out, oh, this is an apology for the Civil War. Please don't kill me. I'm a Republican and a Puritan, and I kind of am now in a sticky spot. So I'm going to make the king look good, while also undercutting it by making my own leader look seductive. It's like, okay, Milton, see through that. Anyway, back to Rape of the Lock. And actually that the fact that this Pope is coming after that period, and this is so fun, is really gives a real sense of exactly what he's writing against. He's writing against this really serious period of poetry, this dense, heavy period of poetry, and he's giving us what? A mock heroic, a story of Belinda, who is a lady, who is a very fine, beautiful lady, and very proud of her hair. In particular, she's very proud of the 2 curls that are either side of her neck at the back, because this is Queen Anne period, and ladies actually wore their hair mostly up, quite up. Not this. This is more Georgian, emulating Georgian hairstyles. This is more mid 18th century, the big powdered and poofed hair. But Queen Anne period, women wore their hair a lot smaller and not powdered and up. So it was a much more natural look. And one of the things that she has are these two curls that she has curled. She knows how good she looks. And a baron, another young person, is so enamored of her that he decides he wants one of these curls, wants one of these locks for himself. And this day, which starts with a dream of Belinda being warned of some calamity that may occur, which could be anything from losing a glove to breaking a teacup, to her little lapdog falling ill, to, oh my goodness, being seduced, anything. She is warned, but she does not pay heed to the warning. There is very much a sing muse of the rage of Achilles, and Belinda is our Achilles in this. So the Baron decides he's going to take this. We have Belinda and some others, including the Baron, play cards, and that is very much played in the mode of the warriors coming out onto the field and playing and being defeated, which is a very big part of the early books of the Iliad. While Belinda is distracted over her coffee, the Baron moves in and, with a pair of scissors given by another lady, steals the curl, steals the lock. And Belinda is immediately enraged, much like Achilles at the death of Patroclus. She is enraged, she is distraught, she is a picture of grief and rage, like Achilles is, and she goes on the attack, demanding the lock back. Can never be returned. The Baron is not going to give this back, because the Baron greatly is into her. He fancies her. And so in the kerfuffle, in the fighting, the lock disappears and becomes a star. It's entirely trivial and entirely stupid. And that's the point. There is a speech given by one of the ladies which encourages temperance, but Belinda will hear none of this because she's going to go into battle over this curl of hair. And so it is very, very frivolous. It is very, very frothy. And I was actually surprised at how frothy it is. It is like a Rococo painting. You know, the big, frothy, pinky, pretty, just gorgeous Rococo, over-the-top Rococo paintings. It's like that, but with words. It is very Baroque. Very, very light. I think that is one of the big striking elements of it, is its lightness, because text that could be dump, it's very stress and pause, which could be really, really just dull. And when it is done in a way that is just poor poetry, the stresses and the rhymes do just become dull. And if they're read poorly, it can become dull. But reading it with the way Pope manages it, he manages to make it both not dull. He manages to make it compelling. It is a rhythm that keeps you moving, like the beat of music, like the beat in music. It's almost like it builds the same way that Baroque music will build. So there is this enormous frivolity in it. And frivolity is another thing that I think of with this, in that this is really part of the criticism of this is the incredible frivolity of and stupidity of these people who are part of the ruling classes. This is at Hampton Court. This is occurring at the court of Queen Anne. Whether Queen Anne is present or not, this is happening at court because you had to be at court. This is the seat of power. Queen Anne famously was incredibly ill. She had multiple pregnancies that either ended in miscarriage or stillbirth. She was not a well woman at all. And but Pope was a great very much liked Queen Anne, partly because of the position that she allowed him to hold, that her rule allowed on Catholics. Now, Pope, there was a lot more crackdown on Catholics under the Georgians, so Pope much preferred Queen Anne and political life under Queen Anne. He more or less had to sort of retire from public political life once the Georgians came into power, once George I came into power. But so you have this frivolous court, you have this silliness, and it makes me think of when you're a child, there is always someone who comes up and talks to you and says, children of the future, blah, 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 blah. And you're going to a public school, or, you know, you're from, you know, the boondocks. You're not from the seat of power. You're not in one of those posh schools. And they're saying, yes. And you sort of sit there at 8 going, wow, I'm the future. And then you get a bit older and you realize, no, they're not letting power go anywhere near people like me. They're giving that to people who have the right background and the right amount of money and the right postcode, no matter how stupid they might be. And that is something that is occurring in this poem. Here we have, this is the seat of power. And what are these people doing? They are gambling and they are squabbling over trivialities. They are focused on trivialities. These are people who should be ruling the country. And they are focused on trivialities. And though Pope had no idea of this, where does that lead you? That leads you to Vive la Révolution. It leads you to equality, fraternity, liberty. It leads to the French Revolution is where it leads. These people are so bored, so rich, that they are squandering the privilege that they have, having no concept that this privilege is based on the fact that, you know, on nothing, on the fact that they are decided that it has been decided that this is the way to run things, not realizing that it doesn't take too much messing about before people rise up and decide that you don't need your head anymore. So that, I think, is sort of, it is implied within that. Which is also something somewhat implied within the Iliad, is that if you can't defend yourself, you are going to fall to barbarians. And in this case, the Greeks technically are the barbarians. They're the invaders who are coming and attacking Ilium or Troy. If you can't, a civilization is only as good as its ability to defend itself. Well, a power is only as good as the people who wield it. And if this is the quality of your leaders, then you might need to start asking some questions, lest it get to the revolution point of the world. That, I think, it's very softly implied. It's not like a big... Pope is not a revolutionary, but he is certainly saying, look at what our leaders are focusing on. They're focusing on stupidity. The other thing, like stupid, idle... They're focusing on stupid, idle trivialities. The other thing that it came to mind when I was looking at this or reading it was how young they are. These are teenagers. They're 18 or 19-year-olds. And if you think that 18 or 19-year-olds are too old to get into squabbles about a curl of hair, you have clearly never seen teenagers arguing over a photograph on a phone. Honestly, no, you can't take that photo. Oh my God. Sweeties, in my day, you took a photograph and then several weeks later when somebody decided to, develop the film, you got to see it. There was none of this. And you just had to live with the fact that there were bad photos of you out there in the world in people's photo albums. It was just life. But young people do stupid things. They do incredibly stupid things. And I think it's very easy to sort of look at a period like any time in the past, but especially somewhere like the 18th century, which was so incredibly stylized and so incredibly... people looked so incredibly different aesthetically to ourselves. And Queen Anne period, the men were often much more made up and bewigged than the women. It's hard, it's easy to sort of think, especially with the titles, Lord something, Baron whatever, to assume, oh, well, they must be middle-aged. This is ridiculously silly for middle-aged people to be behaving in this way. But no, these are very young adults. These are very young adults, which they are unmarried young adults. So these are people in their late teens, early 20s. People married very early, especially in the upper classes, because this was tying together big houses, and as you shrink your dating pool, your fertility goes down, so they're marrying young people anyway so that they have babies. And people married young anyway because they wanted sex. They wanted sex, and that brings in the other element, which is, I think, why Pope uses the word rape instead of theft, although he's using it as theft. There is definitely a sexual element to what happens. There is that possessive quality of it. He wants this curl. The Baron is very much enamored of Belinda physically. He's not interested in her mind. She shows us nothing of that she has a mind, nor does he. But that this is very much there is a sexual undertone to this. Now, possessing hair was a very big thing. Hair could be gifted, especially to a suitor, a lover, in a time when you don't have pictures, and when getting a picture, having a portrait taken, even a small miniature portrait, is going to require hiring an artist. People are going to know you're sitting for a portrait. It's going to be well known. And then who is that for? That is only something you can do when it's an official engagement. So giving a lock of hair to a lover who may not be sanctioned by family or society is an incredibly intimate thing. The Baron is attempting to take this intimacy from Belinda, so there is your sexual content to this as well. The Victorians, of course, took this way too far and made this a whole big, huge fetish. It was, you know, the Victorians ruin everything. We've already established that Victorians ruin everything. But there is a real sense of something illicit in this. There's an illicit in freely given, and there's an illicit, certainly an illicit in taking this. This is also a world, although these are the ruling classes, these are the 1%ers, the even less than 1%ers, the 0.5%ers perhaps that are at court, the very highest echelons. This is still not a world where people are free to engage physically with one another, especially young men and women. They don't touch. So although, of course, the rules of society are more enforced for the lower classes than the upper classes, and these rules start to get bent the older people get. So a mature lady, perhaps a widow, perhaps a woman whose husband spends a lot of time abroad, who knows how to avoid visible consequences of an affair, who has the wit and the financial security to engage a lover, is able to do so. She is also not able to do that. He or she would not be able to do that. He's could just do whatever they want, but she would not be able to do that openly, and yet be able to sort of satisfy physical desires in that way. Young people were not in that position. Young people were strictly chaperoned. Young people were much more controlled, because those young people represent the money and the future alliances between estates. So families are going to be a lot more protective of their daughters than they are of, you know, that widowed aunt who, you know, well, let's be honest. Once you've opened the box, you can't put it back. So this is a very particular world. So that plays into this poem and to the sexual undertone of it, that it has quite a charge to it in that respect. So it's a fun little poem. It's shorter than I actually thought it was. I know it's like this mock heroic epic poem, but it's not actually that epic. Once you're used to reading actual epic poetry, like the Iliad took me a month to read, the Odyssey took about a month to read, because I don't read them really, really fast. I'm not just trying to devour books. I read it and think about it. The Divine Comedy is epic. So an epic poem is actually quite huge. But this one, it's quick, it's fun, it's frothy. I just absolutely, if you've never read any Alexander Pope, it is a great place to have a look at him. Now, next we are continuing on with our little things, and we are going to go back to Samuel Johnson, a favourite of this channel, and we're going to have a look at a selection of his writings from the Rambler and I think it's the Idler. They're from his periodical writings, his periodical essays. So it's a bunch of short essays, and they're the essays out of, this is my Pope, but the Oxford major works of Johnson. So if you're looking for, if you want to read along with or whatever, then everything that we are having a look at for Johnson, Swift and Pope come out of the Oxford major works books. So these big books. So we're going to be having a look at a bunch of essays by Johnson next time. So until then, farewell. If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other writing services to help with your writing.